It starts with silence. Then you hear the first pluck of the guitar strings, followed by the ring of the hi-hat as the drummer begins to play. Slowly, more and more instruments join in, building the disco ballad until it hits its zenith. This metaphor was selected to represent my language and literacy journey, as music has been a key influence throughout my life from birth to current day. My language and literacy education has been a gradual process, with everything learned in my earlier years life building a foundation of my literacy abilities, much like the beginning of a song where the drums will set the tempo and beat of the song. My early years set me up for greater intensity of learning that came with primary and secondary education. Much like how a song builds and builds by adding more instruments and the sounds until it hits the peak and eventually fades out, my language and literacy journey has taken a similar pathway, building and growing over my years during schooling, adding new literacy and language skills, being at its most competent during my final years of high school. I relate the fading out of a song to my years diminishing literacy skills while studying science degree at Melbourne University, where I spent a majority of my time doing equations and rarely doing physics and maths, and rarely actually having to do formal essays. My journey began at birth, like all children. Being the third of four boys, my parents had a lot on their hands, but took the time individually to teach us various aspects of learning. My father is an avid reader. His dream holiday is a book a day, so there's a strong emphasis in my family to be on the ability to read at an early age. My parents would often read books to my brothers and I when we were young. This process of reading helped me develop a better understanding of phonology, as my parents would often get me to read along with them, encouraging me to sound out the words in order to develop my language skills. As stated earlier, music was a key aspect of my life. My father was in a band for most of my childhood, and his band contained many members who all had children similar to the ages of my brothers and I. When the band played together, all of us kids would play together, and this is where I began to develop my social literacy skills, interacting with people other than my immediate family, learning to respect others and learning to listen as well. These skills were further improved upon at kindergarten, with further social interactions teaching me to share alongside social literacy skills learnt at kindergarten. My formal education began with the learning of the ABCs, which assisted me in improving my understanding of words and how to begin writing myself. The literacy skills learnt in kindergarten and in my early years were the base of my knowledge to help me further improve my language and literacy skills. These skills are akin to that of the drummer, setting the pace and the tempo of the song. What I learnt in my early years and in kindergarten assisted me with the transition into primary school, as they gave me the strong starting point and develop other literacy skills. In primary school, I began to develop better understanding of semantics, syntax, and morphology of language. My understanding of these topics were better developed throughout my time in primary school, throughout various activities such as weekly readings and spelling tests. I was never a great speller in primary school. I often remember looking at my classmates' sheets to get their answers correct, so I could seem smart. With music being such a key part, with music being such an integral part of my family's dynamics, my parents insisted that I learned piano when I was in primary school. I would undertake fortnightly lessons with the piano teacher. These lessons taught me how to read musical sheets and repeat songs from listening to them. These lessons helped develop my musical literacy skills and further made me fall in love with music as a whole. My transition to high school was simple for me, as growing up in a small town, I moved to the same high school as many of my friends from primary school, so my social group only grew in numbers as I met new people. It was in high school where my language and literacy skills began to develop to a higher level. My mother's family are from Italy, and in order to better connect with my family's roots, I learnt Italian throughout my years in high school. Although I'd spent my entire childhood listening to my mother and Nuna speaking Italian to each other, it was when I began studying Italian that my grasp on the English language improved. In order to learn a new language, I had to get a better grasp of my own, such as grammar and vocabulary. In Italian, the syntax of words is different. For example, the blue chair in Italian is la sedia blu. But if you directly translate the words as they're written down, you would get the chair blue. Throughout my years in high school, I often spent my afternoons and evenings on MSN chatting away with my friends, and where we talked mainly in leet speak or text chat, as it is called these days, which is a very informal form of literacy. However, in my time at university, I also got my first job, which was working in a pizzeria, where I had to learn to use formal language with customers. This contrast in different languages helped me better develop my oral skills in certain situations. Another way my language and literacy skills developed through high school was when I was a part of the school musicals and when my friends and I performed in concerts in front of the school. I often had a problem with mumbling in my younger years, not enunciating my words clearly. However, when I was on stage, I had to speak in a clear and loud voice. These events assisted me in improving my oral literacy skills and helped me become more confident in front of my peers and others when speaking. I relate my language and literacy abilities in high school to the zenith of the song, and it was this point in my life that I feel I was most competent with the English language. All the skills I'd built up in my primary and secondary schooling had all come to the culmination in my final VCE exam. This is akin to the point of the music when all the instruments combine together to give the listener that moment of euphoria in the song. It is after this moment, the peak, where everything begins to die down, that I relate to my years after high school. Before undertaking this degree here at La Trobe University, I spent several years in a science degree at the University of Melbourne, where I majored in physics. Throughout my time in this degree, I was rarely required to write any form of formal essays, and most of the time was spent doing equations and working with numbers. Just like any skill, if not practice, one's competence in the skill will diminish over time, and this is what happened to my language and literacy skills. Although I achieved adequate scores in my BKSB, reaching a level 5 on the initial diagnostics test, there are many areas that I need to practice, such as purpose of text, comprehension, structure, cohesion, and spelling. I was not surprised by the last one, as I have become over-reliant on technology over the last few years to pick up my spelling mistakes. I wasn't surprised that my vocabulary and critical reading and text analysis were up to par, as I often had to read scientific papers in my time during physics for the past 3 years. And for the past 3 years, I've made up the effort to read a minimum of 3 books every summer, as it was a habit instilled in my father at a young age. From the first note to the last, the disco ballad is a journey. Many instruments are added as the song progresses. The song builds and builds until it hits its climax. I believe this metaphor represents my language and literacy journey perfectly, as I have gained many different skills over my lifetime, and the way these skills culminated at a certain point relates to my abilities and journey as a whole.